My part this evening is to introduce you the speaker, the messenger of the Lord. She is a midwifery student from Michigan, USA. Studied midwifery at Hartland College, Virginia, and is currently studying at Mercy in Action College of Midwifery. Well, her ultimate goal is to share the love she has found in Jesus with the people who have never heard the gospel using midwifery. Help me welcome our sister, Lizzy Osborn.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Happy Sabbath. I'm so glad to be here with you all in Davao in the Philippines. I am really enjoying my time here. I'm really enjoying getting to know people here and your culture. It's been a really neat experience. I just want to thank you all for your warm welcome, for all of our team here, and for really making us feel at home. We're so thankful. So my name is Lizzy Osborn, as Handel was introducing me. I am a midwifery student, and as I am studying, I work as a midwife assistant to several midwives in Michigan where I live. A quick question before we start. How many of you are medical professionals in this room? Who's a medical professional? A nurse, a tech here, a doctor, or you work here at the hospital. Does anyone work here at the hospital? Yeah, I thought there'd be a few here. Does anyone work on call sometimes? Is anyone sometimes on call? Like you can go places, but you have to be ready to come back if you need to. I see a few. Well, I work on call quite a bit, and so some things I've learned about being on call is you always have to have a pager or a phone or something with you at all times. For me, it's my phone. I have to have it with me all the time so that I can be contacted to come in to work when I need to. And the other thing is that I always have to be prepared. No matter what I'm doing, I always have to be ready because I never know when I'm going to get a call because I'm on call. Tonight, we're going to talk about what it means to be on call for Jesus. Let's start with prayer. You can stay seated. You can stay seated while I kneel. Before I pray, we're going to have a quiet moment, and I'd like you to pray for 3 things. Please pray for me as the speaker that Jesus would speak his words and not mine. Please pray for yourself that God's message would be clear to your heart, and pray for the person next to you. Let's have a few quiet moments we can pray in our hearts silently. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for the Sabbath hours that are here. Thank you for this Friday evening that we can be here and hear your word. I just pray that you would hide me behind Jesus and that your words would be spoken tonight, that you would teach each of us through these simple lessons from your word, and that your message would shine through. In Jesus' name, amen. So the work that I do in the States, I work as a midwife assistant, like I said, but an interesting thing is the midwife that I work for, she does mostly home births, so she goes to people's homes and delivers their baby there. It's a small practice, and it's just her and me, usually, which means I have to be on call 24/7. So I'm never not on call when I'm in town. I'm always on call, and I could always get a birth. Now, usually it's only once or twice a week that I get a call, but when I do, I have to be ready right away because she's going to need help, and I don't know how fast the woman's labor is going to go. I have to get there right away. Sometimes being on call 24/7 can get old, and I always have to be ready. I always have to have my phone nearby, and no matter what I'm doing or how interesting it is, I have to drop it right away when I get a call and rush to the lady's home to help the midwife. One time I was at home and we had some guests over. We were about to have lunch, and I had spent hours that day, it seemed like hours at least, preparing lunch for our guests and my family. I had made, I don't know if you have this, if you eat this here, but eggplant, I had made eggplant parmesan. It was super special and I was really looking forward to it. And we had a big salad and we had all kinds of other dishes, and I was really looking forward to lunch with our friends. And just as I pulled up the chair to sit down to eat, my phone rang. And I answered the phone, and sure enough, it was Star, and she was calling, and there was a lady in labor, and I quick had to rush out the door. My mom handed me a plate of food, but by the time I got to eat it several hours later, it was cold, and it wasn't with my friends at home. Another time, our family had like 20-some people at our house for the evening, Sabbath evening. We had enjoyed a nice time together, and it was late, and I was getting things cleaned up, and I was so tired. I had a headache, and it had just been a long, long day. I wasn't feeling well, and I got in bed, and it didn't seem like just after I had fallen asleep, my phone rang again. So I answered the phone again. Sure enough, it was the midwife, and she was calling saying that there was a lady in labor. But she said, I don't know how fast it's going to go, but how about you come out, because it's a long drive. It was a stormy night, and it was a long drive, and I was so sleepy, and I had a hard time staying awake. I finally got there, and the lady's house was all dark, and everyone was sound asleep. So I tiptoed in the door, and the midwife told me, well, things aren't going very fast, so we're just sleeping on the couch. I said, okay, I can sleep on the couch. So I brought my blanket inside, and I lay down on the couch, but as soon as I laid down on the couch, this scent just came wafting up to me, like maybe one of her younger children had accidentally gone to the bathroom on the couch or something. It just didn't smell very good, so I tried to cover that up. And then the grandma was sleeping a few feet away, and she was snoring really loud, and I just couldn't sleep. And then every half an hour about there, the midwife would get up and check on the mom, so then I would wake up, and it was not a pleasant night. But we got through it. A friend of mine who was also a student midwife, she told me a story about a lady who was known to have very fast labors. When she went into labor, it just hardly took any time before the baby was born. So the midwife she was working with told her, I need you to be extra ready. Have all your clothes laid out, have your backpack packed, have your snacks all ready to go, so that when we get a call from this lady, we can run out the door as soon as we get the call, and we'll get there on time. So she was sleeping in her room peacefully one night when the door flew open and the midwife came in and said, quick, quick, we need to go. Alice is in labor. So they jumped out of bed, they put their clothes on quickly, they ran out the door. In less than 10 minutes, they were in the car on the way to the birth. And you know what? She made it there on time because she was prepared. She wouldn't have made it there on time if she had been fumbling through her dresser like, where is my clothes? I can't find them, and they're all dirty in the laundry. She wouldn't have been ready, and she would have missed the birth altogether. I was reading in my midwifery textbook a while ago while I was studying, I came across this sentence. It said, the life of a midwife must be one of constant readiness, lest a labor in the birth should catch her unprepared. Does that sound familiar to you at all? What if we changed a few words? What if we said, the life of a Christian must be one of constant readiness, lest the coming of Jesus should catch him or her unprepared? Do you see where I'm going with this? Let's turn to Matthew 25. If you have your Bibles with you, let's turn to Matthew 25. I hope you have your Bibles with you, because we're going to be reading quite a bit from the Bible tonight. Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. I'm going to read this passage. It's a little bit long, but it's a beautiful story about the 10 virgins. Oh, thank you. They even have it up on the screen for us. That's great. Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. So what was the difference between the wise virgins and the foolish virgins? What was the difference? One was prepared and one was unprepared, correct? The wise virgins were prepared. They had their oil with their lamps. They had extra oil because they wanted to be ready no matter when Jesus came, even if it was longer than they expected. The foolish virgins did not prepare ahead with the extra oil. Let's turn to Luke chapter 12. A few Gospels over to the book of Luke chapter 12. We're going to read verse 35 through 40. So that's Luke chapter 12, verse 35 through 40. Let your loins be girded about, and your lights burning, and you yourselves like unto men that wait for their Lord, when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him when? Someday? In a few hours? Immediately. Blessed are those servants, whom the Lord, when he comes, shall find watching. Verily I say unto you, that he shall gird himself, and make them to sit down to meat, and will come forth and serve them. And if he shall come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them so, blessed are those servants. And this know, that if the good man of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched, and not have suffered his house to be broken through. Be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour when you think not. This passage really struck me as it describes very graphically the coming of Jesus in a story of someone who is watching and waiting. It seems to take a long time. It goes through the night. It goes longer than they expected. But yet they watch, and they are rewarded in the end when, in this case, their Lord comes and finds them watching, and they open the door to him immediately. I want to be like that, don't you? Going back to our midwifery analogy, when a woman is pregnant, we typically estimate some kind of due date. And we think, well, I think it's going to be around the 15th of this month. Now, it doesn't mean that she will deliver her baby on the 15th of that month. It just means that it'll be around that time somewhere, usually within a month of that date. So let's say that the 15th comes and goes, and she still hasn't delivered the baby. Let's say it's even like the 18th. Would you say, oh, I give up. She's not going to have a baby anymore. It's not going to happen. Is that what you would say? That would be kind of ridiculous. What if it got to be like the 25th of that month, and she still hadn't had a baby? And you said, well, you know what? We have been waiting. We have been waiting for 10 days past your due date. And every day we've said that the baby's going to be born soon. And every day we've been lying because the baby hasn't been born soon. So this must not be happening. You know, the baby must not be going to be born. That would be pretty ridiculous, right? But have you ever heard that being said about the second coming of Jesus? We have waited so long for Jesus to come. Our grandparents were waiting for Jesus to come. Maybe we weren't right. Maybe he isn't coming soon. No, that's not the case. The case is that Jesus coming, delay in his coming is no reason to doubt, but all the more reason to expect his imminent return very soon, even sooner. Every day that goes by means that his coming is that much sooner and that much more sure. There's a verse in the Old Testament that says, "Though it tarry, wait for it will surely come, it will not tarry." Let's read 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 1 through 6. It has a very interesting, it ties into this whole idea. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 1 through 6 says, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them." Interesting, look at this next part. "As travail or labor upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." So even the Bible here has this comparison. Very interesting. Let's keep going. "But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. You are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as do others, but let us do what? Watch and be sober." Let us watch and be sober. I'm going to read to you a paragraph that's from the Spirit of Prophecy. It's from one of the testimonies on page 16.2. It says, "Watch after watch I saw was in the past. Because of this, should there be a lack of vigilance?" She's talking about the soon coming of Jesus in this context. "Oh no, there is the greater necessity of unceasing watchfulness, for now the moments are fewer than before the passing of the first watch. Now the period of time for the waiting is necessarily shorter than at first. If we watched with unabated vigilance then, how much more need of double watchfulness in the second watch? The passing of the second watch has brought us to the third, and now it is inexcusable to relax our watching. The third watch calls for threefold earnestness. To become impatient now would be a loss of all our earnest, persevering watching heretofore." That's really convicting, isn't it? Let's go to another Bible text. This is in Acts chapter 1. It's very familiar, I believe, to most of us. Acts chapter 1. The story of Jesus' ascension back to heaven. Acts 1, verse 9 through 11. Acts 1, verse 9 through 11. Jesus and the disciples are speaking together, and Christ is just about to ascend into heaven. And it says, "And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven." Right along that same passage from the Spirit of Prophecy, a few sentences down, she says, "The men of Galilee stood looking steadfastly toward heaven to catch, if possible, a glimpse of their Savior as he ascended. Two men in white apparel stood by them, who were heavenly angels, commissioned to comfort them for the loss of the presence of their Savior. They inquired, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven." And listen to the lesson that she draws from this. God designs his people shall fix their eyes heavenward, looking for the glorious appearing of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I had always thought of this passage as in like manner Jesus will come, and that's true. He'll come in the clouds just as he ascended into the clouds. But also, just as true, is that the people who are waiting on earth will be gazing steadfastly into heaven, watching for his soon return. They'll be prepared, they'll be preparing themselves, they'll be watching, they'll be ready for Jesus' soon coming. We need to keep our eyes gazing towards Jesus. We can't lose our hope now of the soon coming of Jesus and of his return. This next paragraph is very long from the Spirit of Prophecy that I'm going to read, but it's going to paint a picture that's really going to grasp your imagination. I want you to follow along as I read it. It's a little bit long. When Jesus ceases to plead for man, the cases of all are decided forever. This is the time of reckoning with his servants, those who have neglected the preparation of purity and holiness, fitting them to be waiting ones to welcome their Lord. Their sun sets in gloom and in darkness, and rises not again. Probation closes. Christ's intercessions cease in heaven, and it is finally sudden upon all. And those who have neglected the purifying of their souls by obeying the truth are found sleeping. They become weary of waiting and watching. They become indifferent in regard to the coming of their Master. They longed not for his appearing, and thought there was no need of such continued persevering watching. They had been disappointed in their expectations, and might be again. They concluded that there was time enough yet to arouse. They would be sure and not lose the opportunity of securing an earthly treasure. It would be safe to get all of this world that they could, and in securing this object, they lost all anxiety and interest in the appearing of the Master. They became indifferent and careless, as though his coming was yet in the distance. While their interest was buried up in their worldly gains, the work closed in the heavenly sanctuary, and they were unprepared. If they had only known that the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary would close so soon, how differently would they have conducted? How earnestly would they have watched? The Master anticipated all of this and gave them timely warning in the command to watch. He distinctly states the suddenness of his coming. He does not measure the time, lest we shall neglect a momentary preparation, and in our indolence look ahead to the time when we think he will come and defer preparation. Watch ye therefore, for you know not. Yet this uncertainty and the suddenness at last foretold fails to quicken our watchfulness and arouse us from the stupidity to earnest wakefulness for our expected Master. Those not found waiting and watching are finally surprised in their unfaithfulness. The Master has come, and instead of their being ready to open unto him immediately, they are locked in a worldly slumber and are lost at last. A company was presented before me in contrast to the one described. They were waiting and watching. Their eyes were directed heavenward, and the words of their Master were upon their lips. What I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Watch ye therefore, for you know not when the Master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest suddenly he find you sleeping. The Lord intimates a delay before the morning finally dawns. He would not have them give way to weariness, nor relax their earnest watchfulness, because the morning does not open upon them as they expected, as soon as they expected. The waiting ones were represented to me as looking upward. They were encouraging one another, repeating these words. Isn't that interesting? She painted two pictures. One group who became weary with watching. They wanted to gain what this world had. They wanted to gain the treasures of this world and still gain heaven, but it didn't work like that. They became distracted with the world and lost interest in preparing and being prepared for the soon coming of Jesus. But the other group did not lose hope. They kept the hope of Jesus' soon coming bright in their hearts, and they kept encouraging each other. Keep preparing for the soon coming of Jesus. Which group do you belong to? Last summer, I had just started on call. I was on call with this midwife all the time, 24/7. And I really wanted to go have some fun with my friends. I wanted to go skiing, water skiing, and swimming. I wanted to go swimming and having a grand time with my friends. But I was on call, and I didn't know quite how to make this work, and I wanted to be responsible. So I came up with a plan. I would take my phone, and I would put it in the boat where we were going to be, and I'd have one of my friends keep an eye on my phone and let me know if I got any messages from the midwife. And then I could go swimming and check my phone every now and then, it would be fine. So that was my plan. I stuck my phone in my pocket, I walked down to the lake where my friends were, and they were already swimming, and it was such a hot day, and I just couldn't wait to get in the water, and I forgot all about my phone, and I just ran off the end of the dock, and I jumped in the water. And I went swimming for a few minutes and just had a grand time, and it was just wonderful, and then suddenly I had this sinking realization that my phone was still in my pocket, and had been swimming with me, and phones don't like swimming, so I went and I got my phone, and you know how sometimes you can put it in rice and that helps, but it didn't help. It was completely crashed, and I couldn't resurrect it for anything. And now I didn't have a way to contact my midwife. So what was I going to do? So as soon as I pulled my phone out of my pocket, I realized, I was like, oh no, she can't call me. If she calls me, I'm not going to be ready. If she calls right now, I'll be unprepared, I'm going to miss the birth. So my first thought was, I have to get back in touch with her. I have to be able to be connected with my midwife. I have to be ready. I'm on call. Do you realize the significance of being on call for Jesus? It's so much more important than being on call for anything else could ever be. What is your first thought when you recognize that you have lost your connection with Jesus? What's your first thought? Is your first thought, whatever it takes, I need to be in harmony with Jesus again. I need that communion with him. I need that connection with him. What is your first priority? Are you watching faithfully and earnestly for the imminent and soon coming return of Jesus? Or have you allowed the things of this world to drift into your heart and to distract you from his coming? In closing, let's read Revelation chapter 3. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. It's one of my favorite verses. It says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him and he with me." So my friends, I just want to encourage you tonight. If you've gotten distracted with what this world has to offer, make a surrender of that to Jesus. Do whatever it takes to restore your connection with him, because his coming is soon, and we want to be ready for that. He's standing and knocking at the door of your heart, and let's invite him in together, especially at the opening of the Sabbath. He wants to come into our hearts and allow him into our hearts. Let's have prayer together. Our Father in heaven, we want to invite you into our hearts just now. We realize that your coming is very soon, and we want to be prepared. I pray that you would please be with each of my brothers and sisters in Christ that are here tonight, that you would touch their hearts, and that you would help them to surrender whatever it is that is between their hearts and you, to you, so that you can have full access to them. I pray for your Holy Spirit to be here in this place, that you would bless us over this Sabbath, and that you would